Thank you. What is? Sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that very nice introduction, Roseanne. How many of you have ever broken the rules? Okay, now I'm not talking about breaking the rules in a way where you needed reputation.com to bury the evidence. I'm talking about breaking the rules to solve a problem. That's the thrill of innovation. When faced with a challenge, try a creative approach to solve your problem. That's how innovation happens. It's really the story of my life. And it has been quite a ride, as Roseanne mentioned. I like to think of it as Mr. Toad's wild ride on the Innovation Express. Does that sound like fun? Great. I can't see the screen in front of me. I just want to let Fred know. Please put my slides up. Or George, thank you. Okay, thanks. Sorry, you guys. Okay. So I want to let you know, and I'm going to say this a couple times because you're not going to believe me. All of these stories are true. Okay? None of the names have been changed to protect the innocent or the guilty. I am keeping it real, people. It all started in the early 80s in San Diego at Mission Bay High. My high school was right out of a movie. Oops. Now, as a senior at Mission Bay High, I had it going on. I had an awesome set of wheels. And I was excelling in 3 areas: creative writing, interior design. This was the interior of my locker. How many of you were in high school around that time too? A couple of you? Okay, I know some people won't admit it, right? And I was also quite interested in horticulture. To be honest, school kind of bored me, but there was one class that I loved and I never ditched. It was called You and the Law. I learned about contracts, torts, my Miranda rights, and misdemeanors like smoking pot on school property. For our final report, the class had an entire month to write a paper on the criminal justice system. My classmates went to the library to copy out of a book. Not me. I turned to the pages of our local diatribe, the San Diego Reader, to the personal ads. Incarcerated white male, 35, seeks female companionship. I see somebody's mouth jaw-dropping back there. Yes, it's true. So incarcerated was a word that I just learned. My mother, of course, made me look it up in the dictionary when I asked what it meant. Now, despite knowing what the definition was, my mother encouraged me to write to prisoners. She even let me use her computer. I wrote letters to 6 inmates. I couldn't say I was in high school, right? I said I was in college, that I was writing a book on the criminal justice system. I wanted to know what they thought of it. How is life treating them on the inside? Now, I knew I would get a better response if I sent a photo, but no one wanted a photo of me. I was a dork. But my older sister, Victoria, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I sent photos of my sister to vicious killers. It's better than that. My sister was the school photographer. Her dark room was a gold mine. Now, I didn't want to do anything mean like send photos of the prom queen, but I had no qualms about sending this photo of my sexy and unsuspecting best friend, Lydia. There she is, posing against my mom's 66 Jag. By the way, to give you guys an idea of how long ago this was, she was 17 there. Today is her 50th birthday. So we are really back in time. So at first, I had to find a way to get the letters because I didn't want these guys showing up at my parents' door when they got paroled. So my mom suggested that we use my father's post office box. Well, then my mom and I had to engage in a little criminal activity of our own, and we stole the key off my dad's keychain, and he never knew what we were up to. At first, the letters just trickled in, but after 2 weeks, every single guy wrote back. Some even sent photos. Oh, that's Raul. We lost touch. My final report consisted of 1 intro page, typewritten by me, and 23 handwritten pages of letters written by my new friends on the inside. My teacher said it was the most creative report he had ever seen in all of his years of teaching. I got an A+. And I learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes it pays to break the rules. Ever since I was in high school, ever since I was in 8th grade, I wanted to be in advertising, like my TV hero, Darren, on Bewitched. But after I graduated from high school, I didn't want to sit in a classroom for 4 more years. I couldn't wait to get started in advertising right away. But it's not like I could just wiggle my nose and get a job. My mom suggested I take an advertising class at the local community college. My teacher hadn't set foot in an ad agency since Darren worked at McMahon and Tate. Meanwhile, at home in La Jolla, I was driving my mother insane. In my teenage eyes, she had turned into a total witch. Of course, that's not really her, and today we're BFFs. But at the time, I was driving both of my parents crazy, and they made me move out of the house. For the first time in my life, I had to earn a paycheck. My parents were actually really cool. They spoiled me. They wanted me to enjoy my childhood, and despite me wanting to work, they wouldn't let me work until I was 18. That was really nice of them. The problem was, my resume was anemic. I had to do something to make it stand out. So, under interest, I listed roller skating, horticulture, and penology. I know, it looks like a dirty word, right? That was my intention. Penology is the study of prisons and prisoners, and I was interested. That one word attracted the attention of a hiring manager at a major corporation where I landed my first job. Minimum wage was $3.35 an hour, but as a cashier at 7-Eleven, I learned more about consumer buying behavior and brand loyalty than I ever would have from a textbook. But I couldn't make cherry Slurpees forever. And besides, I hated when people from my high school would come in and recognize me. Working the graveyard shift at 7-Eleven, I had plenty of time to peruse the prisoner personals. One night I was flipping through the reader and an ad caught my eye. It was for a new school, the La Jolla Academy of Advertising Art, right in my own backyard. The ad said that all of the instructors currently worked in advertising, and it was only a 1-year program. I could handle that. I signed up the next week. 1 semester later, I had moved way beyond Darren Stevens. Advertising legend David Ogilvy was my new higher power, and this was my new Bible, the Book of Dave. Dave said that all wannabe copywriters, such as myself, should spend our first couple years in direct marketing, learning how to write long copy that sells. That sounded good to me, and after I graduated, I talked my way into an internship with my direct marketing instructor. I actually found a job a couple months later, my first big agency job in Seattle, my first time away from home. So I was 20 years old. I was a junior copywriter. I was going places. 3 months later, I was fired. Yep, after just 90 days, my boss, the creative director, who always wore a suit for some reason, Phil Herring, said that I wasn't senior enough. I wasn't good enough. Oh, obviously that's not him. This is. After Seattle, I moved to the roller skating capital of the world, Venice Beach. It was also a hotbed of horticulture. In LA, I became a flower child for 2 years. I loved working for Teleflora. Working at a big in-house agency, to me, was the happiest place on earth. It wasn't just that I got to work in advertising. I was tapped to be creative and give ideas to different departments. My favorite one was product development. One day during a brainstorming meeting for Secretary's Week, do you guys remember Secretary's Week? Okay, remember? God, politically incorrect now. I brought up the fact that secretaries are like lifesavers, right? They're always saving somebody's butt. So I said, we should partner with Lifesavers Candy and have a bouquet and name it the You're a Lifesaver Bouquet. Ta-da! That was my first name. After Teleflora, I worked at a really forgettable direct marketing agency. No, seriously, I forgot the name. I didn't have Evernote, obviously. But what I do remember is during that time, I was an active member of the Direct Marketing Creative Guild. I had really learned to love direct marketing, and I liked the people a lot. I volunteered at every event, and by doing so, I earned a lot of brownie points. And through some calculated networking and a little sucking up, I schmoozed my way into my dream job. Ta-da! I finally made it into Ogilvy. Ogilvy was great. One of the best things is we had huge clients like Microsoft, Intel, Mighty Dog. You have not lived until you've been on a photo shoot with a live animal. Our clients had a lot of money to spend too, which was also really fun. And they, pardon the pun, really let us push the envelope. Here's a direct mail piece that I did for Microsoft. It went to resellers. And what was cool about it, it's a little hard to tell, is you know those plastic wiggly eyes that you can stick on things? Well, I had been obsessed with those at the time. I was sticking them on everything. And I said, let's stick these on a direct mail piece, send it through the mail, and see if it comes back with the eyeballs still on it. And we tried it a couple times, and it did. So when we mailed this out, it had the eyeballs on it, and so when people got it, they could shake it, and the eyeballs would move. So that was a fun thing that we did. Another one was for Intel. This was a direct mail piece, again, no envelope. And the inside, and these are some of the headlines I wrote for it. But what was cool about this is I had the idea to put an actual X-ray inside of the piece. So direct mail can be fun. Now, every year, Ogilvy would enter our very best work into the Creative Guild's awards show. We always swept the awards. And every year at the annual dinner, I would always make sure to run into my old boss, Phil, You're Not Good Enough Herring, always when I was walking off the stage with one of these. It was the polite way of giving him the finger. At Ogilvy, everyone read Adweek magazine religiously. One day, I was flipping through the back pages, and I had a major high school flashback. Paper Moon Graphics, the greeting card company that I had worshipped since I was in high school and still worship till that day, was looking for writers to create new greeting card lines. Well, when I was in high school, Paper Moon's cards were really tame, but since that time, they had become really racy. I knew I was going to have to send them something really provocative. Luckily, I knew all about provocative. Ever since I had been in advertising school, I had been collecting vintage 1950s magazines. I'd go to the flea market and get them. One Sunday morning, another magazine caught my eye. That's when the light bulb went off. Armed with a pair of scissors and a glue stick, I cut out the sweet, innocent retro images from the magazines, and I juxtaposed them with scandalous text from penthouse letters. The results were hysterical. I had created dozens of these, so I photocopied 40, put them in an envelope, dropped them in the mail, and sent them off to Paper Moon. And this is back in the days, there was no internet, there was, no phone calls, please. So all I could do was just hope and wait for the phone to ring. Worst response rate ever. Nobody called. I was heartbroken. Months went by. I had almost forgotten about Paper Moon when I came home late one night after work to a blinking light on my answering machine. Beep. Hello, Alexandra. This is Fred from Paper Moon Graphics, and I really like your work. It's super funny. You have a dirtier mind than I do. Give me a call. I couldn't believe it. They finally discovered me. It was late, but I couldn't wait to talk to them, so I called, thought maybe someone would answer. The phone rang and rang, but finally, an older gentleman answered. And it was Fred. So we started talking, and he was telling me how much he loved my work, and we were laughing, but it was starting to get really late. And I said, Fred, do you always work this late? Yeah, I'm always here late. I'm the janitor. Fred had found my work in the trash. I was devastated. I almost started crying. I just couldn't believe it. It's like, the janitor, are you kidding? But Fred, he felt bad for me, and he said, look, I know the creative director, Robert Fitch, and why don't you just come in next week, some afternoon, and I'll introduce you to him. What did I have to lose? The following Thursday, I sat across the desk from Robert Fitch. I felt this high. As I sunk into my chair, Robert said, now, why are you here? Fred thought I should meet you. Fred? You do know who Fred is, don't you? Yes, he's the janitor. Robert howled. Fred owns the company. The joke was on me. Paper Moon loved my work, and after making it a little less X-rated, they launched the wildly successful retro greeting card line. There I am with my big hair and a wall of my cards. And I'm sure some of you remember these. Well, what happened is a lot of other greeting card companies started copying Paper Moon. So you know what they say, if you can't beat them, join them. So I started freelancing for them too. Does this one look familiar? When Ogilvy offered me the opportunity to transfer to the Seattle office with a promotion, I grabbed my umbrella. By day, I wrote geek speak for Microsoft. By night, I wrote personal ads for myself and my girlfriends. We all wanted to meet a Microsoft millionaire. My artsy friend, Kelly, wanted to meet a guy who she said was less grunge and granola and more brains and business. Read Microsoft millionaire. How could I tactfully say that in a headline? I had it. Attention, Birkenstock boycotters. The ad generated a ton of letters. Kelly was just completely overwhelmed. I begged her to let me see all of them. So 3 weeks later, we met at a diner on Capitol Hill, and she dumped out her bag on the table, and out they all came, all of the letters and photos. And there he was, my old boss. Phil, you're not good enough, Herring. The opening line of his letter, Dear Ms. Boycotter, you got me after the headline. I didn't even have to read the rest of the ad. Wow. Even though Kelly was not attracted to Phil Herring at all, I made her go on a Starbucks date with him to break the news. Over lattes, Kelly listened politely while Phil bragged about all of his successes, and when he got to the part that he owned a successful ad agency called Herring Newman, right on cue, Kelly said, Herring Newman. I think I know someone who worked for you. Really, said Phil, puffing up. Who? Alexandra Watkins. Oh yeah, I remember her. That was a long time ago. Then Kelly delivered the death blow. She wrote my ad. Talk about you and the law, this was poetic justice. I did eventually date some of my own Microsoft guys. Most of them were cuter than this one. But the one guy at Microsoft that I really wanted to marry got engaged and married to someone else. After 5 awesome years at Ogilvy, a juicy job offer took me to San Francisco. It was 1995. I bought a place south of Market and got in touch with my inner interior decorator. I love working at agencies. It was really fun. I had a very colorful agency life as well. And in my free time, I went traveling all over the world. But with only 2 or 3 weeks off a year to travel, I knew that I would never see the whole world. So after a few years working at different agencies, I quit to become a freelance copywriter. This was my website. My timing was perfect. The .com gravy train was just taking off. I got huge projects to write websites for Kinko's, Logitech, Home Depot. The money was flowing. Remember those good old days? Here's some, it was a little obnoxious too, right? So here's a couple ads that I wrote that kind of play off the excess that we all had. These first 2 are for a bike company called Tytech. And the next one is for a real estate company in the East Bay called Red Oak Realty, and the ads were targeted at people in the East Bay Hills that they were trying to get them to sell their homes. Well, we all know what happened, right? The bubble burst, that .com gravy train crashed. There was no work. San Francisco was a ghost town. Luckily, I had saved some money, so I rented out my place and I went traveling for a year to Australia, Bali, Fiji, and New Zealand. I wish I had a GoPro camera at that time, right? That would have been cool. Well, there's nothing like a year off to help you get your priorities straight and figure out what's really important. I mean, besides throwing another shrimp on the Barbie. When I came back to San Francisco, I had a tan and I had a plan. All of those years as a copywriter, every once in a while, I would get thrown a bone and get to name something. I loved it, and I thought I was really good at it too. Well, I didn't even find out that naming was actually a real profession until right before I left on my trip. When I came back, I was determined to be a professional namer. I heard that the place I should make a name for myself was legendary branding firm Landor & Associates. Surely they would hire me. It would have been easier to get into Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. Oh, I had the talent. But what I found out, I didn't have the pedigree. No degree in Latin, no degree in linguistics. Remember, I didn't have a degree in anything. But I didn't let that stop me. For 2 years, I tried everything I could to get the attention of anybody at Landor. Again, pre-internet, I don't know anybody's name. I'm just kind of randomly guessing who's who. I send things to HR, and they were very secretive. I even sent photos of my dog and all of the names I came up with for her. Landor didn't bite. I finally did get into Landor, and you will never guess how. On a Match.com date. It was Saturday night. My third date was Samir. We were going to a cocktail party where I would be meeting his friends for the first time. Now, I know it's hard to believe, but walking into a room full of strangers, I'm actually really shy. I asked Samir to tell me who some of the people would be there so I would feel more comfortable. He told me about Susan from his office and Jim from his bike team, and then he mentioned his friend Anthony from Landor. What? You know someone who works at Landor? What does he do? I don't know, head of naming or something. Ding, ding, ding. I went to grab my cards, which I always kept by the door, and Samir looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm getting my cards. I want to meet your friend Anthony." "No, you're not." "Samir, what are you talking about? I really want to meet your friend. I've been trying to get into Landor for 2 years now." "Alexandra, every time my friends meet Anthony and they find out that he's a product namer at Landor, they talk his ear off and they tell him how good they are at naming things." "But I am good at naming things." At this point, things weren't going well. I grabbed some of my cards, I put them in my tiny little purse, and off we went. We weren't even talking by the time we got to the party. It was so crowded. There was no way Samir was going to tell me who Anthony was. I spent the first hour eavesdropping on every conversation until I finally heard a guy in a top hat introduce himself as Anthony. I moseyed on into the group, introduced myself. Anthony looked me straight in the eye, reached out his hand. "Alexandra, what do you do?" I totally lied. "I'm a professional product namer." "No, I'm a professional product namer." "You are?" "Why, yes, I'm the head of naming at Landor." "No, you're kidding me." "No, really, I am." "Well, I haven't heard of you. What have you named?" Well, on the way over in the car, I was remembering everything I had named over the years, so I reeled them all off. Then Anthony looked at me and said those magic words, "Do you have a card on you?" This entire time, Samir had been watching from the bar, so while I turned to pretend to see if I had a card on me, I looked at Samir with the biggest F you on my face. I pulled out a card. "Oh, here, Anthony, I found one. It's my last one." 3 weeks later, Anthony's assistant called, and I got my first big Landor freelance project, coming up with names for Frito-Lay. I was hooked, and Landor was hooked on me. I became their go-to freelancer in San Francisco and New York. I started becoming the big freelance namer for a lot of different naming and branding firms. It was a great way to learn the business and see how other companies work and operate and what their creative briefs are. And what was fun is I got to work on huge accounts like Wendy's. Have you ever eaten a Baconator or wanted to eat a Baconator? That's my name. Unfortunately, I can never really take credit for it because I did it for strategic name development. I was just a hired gun. That's their name, and I totally got that. It's their client. But I couldn't keep doing this for other people, letting them put their good names on my great names. I had to have a plan. It was time for me to open my own naming firm. Eat My Words was founded in 2005. We specialize in 2 things, names and taglines. I also do corporate workshops where I teach people how to concept and brainstorm like I do. They're called Spilling the Beans because I spill it all. Everything we do is really playful, fun, and unexpected. We started out working with small fish, but now we work with really big fish. Here are some of our clients. Okay, everyone always asks, What's your creative process? Creative process is an oxymoron. There's no process to being creative. You never know where a good idea is going to come from. Also, naming isn't a science. I always laugh when I hear my competitors talk about their scientific processes, like verbal linguistics or verbal identity engineering and computational linguistics. Does any of that sound even remotely creative? There's only one tool in this photo, and it's not an easel. When you're sitting in a white conference room staring at a white board, that's not where colorful names come from. And they don't come from any of these places either. No drunken Scrabble games. We only use one tool at Eat My Words to brainstorm. Surprised? All of our ideas come from looking at places on the internet. It could be Google Images, iTunes, a thesaurus. The internet is an online goldmine. It also helps to have a colorful workspace. This you might recognize as the loft I bought in '95. I haven't lived there in 8 years now. I just use it as an office. It's just a very fun playground. This is my desk. It's a 1950s diner booth. There I am from yesteryear. Our lounge upstairs, and the pink fridge is our bookcase, and our business card, if any of you see it, it's a little pink fridge inspired by this. Stuffed animal sofa, and this is our gnome nomenclature with a G. How many of you have a name that's hard for people to spell? Okay, what about hard for people to pronounce? And how many of you have a name that people sometimes forget? Well, that's why we wear name tags, right? Well, a lot of brands have the same problem, but they can't blame their parents. These are what I call head scratchers. My philosophy is a name should make you smile instead of scratch your head. I've created a 12-point name evaluation test based on this. It's called the Smile and Scratch Test. It's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Inc., and most recently the Business Times, where Roseanne found me. SMILE is an acronym for the 5 qualities that make a name great. It's suggestive, meaningful to your customers, not you, just to you. It's imagery, legs lends itself to a theme, and makes an emotional connection. And on the flip side of that is scratch, when to scratch it off the list. If it has any of these challenges, these are all deal breakers. And I'll just quickly show you a few of our names that I love. Here's some consumer names I've done. You might recognize some of these from down here. Gringo Lingo is a language school in Cali, Colombia. Retriever, GPS for dogs. B2B, lots of companies down here. And these are my favorite ones, the retail stores. Some of you might know Smitten Ice Cream. They're just about to open their 3rd location on Saturday. So what's next? Well, as Roseanne mentioned, I have a book coming out. Last year, a publisher approached me and asked me to write a how-to book on naming because they love my writing style for my website. They thought I had a sense of humor, and it was, which is seriously lacking in most business books these days. So the publisher, they're called Barrett Kohler. I recognize some of their titles. They're a very good publisher. Hello, My Name is Awesome, How to Create Brand Names That Stick, comes out September 15th. It's already getting a lot of buzz. It's being endorsed by Dan and Chip Heath from Made to Stick. And the Today Show has expressed interest in doing a segment on it already. And on Monday, we sold the audio rights, which is awesome. So, what's my point here? What I'm just trying to tell you all is dare to be different. Breaking the rules has led to my most innovative ideas and biggest successes. From writing letters to prisoners, to deconstructing penthouse letters, to lying through my teeth to get into Landor, I have been fearless. Don't be afraid to break the rules to solve a problem. It's okay to color outside the lines. But remember, innovation only happens when you give yourself permission to bend, break, and ignore the rules. Consider this your permission slip, signed by me and my mom. Thank you.